it's Nikki from My Healthy Beginning, and I want to share with you today something about my history that a lot of you may not know, but it's one of those moments that has me doing what I'm doing right now. When I was in my early 20s, I had a year where I suffered from 14 urinary tract infections. 14 in 1 year. It makes me think about when I was 7 years old, and I remember our doctor saying to my mom, now if she has strep one more time, we're gonna have to take out her tonsils. And you bet I got strep one more time and I had to have my tonsils taken out. So that's a lot of antibiotic use, right? Well, when I was in my early 20s, UTIs were fairly common for me. For whatever particular reason, when I was 23, I think it was, I started getting them and getting them and getting them and getting them, and it was just like, it was chronic. Like, it was annoying and frustrating and debilitating and embarrassing and all of that. And I've been seeing my acupuncturist already for a couple of years, and we were working on other things. We were working on balancing out my menstrual cycle. We were, working on acne. We were working on all kinds of things. And a couple of things happened in that year. One of them was, okay, this is a lot of urinary tract infections, and I was undergoing super uncomfortable tests, right? Because there was nothing wrong with me, and yet the medical doctors kept looking and kept looking, and these tests were unbearably uncomfortable, finding out whether, my anatomy was working the way it was supposed to work, and, did I have enough of this and enough of that, and it just was over the top. I remember lying on my back on this table with this urologist shoving a balloon through my ureters, and I'm squirming in pain, and him, like, in this very brash sort of manner, just telling me to, like, lay still so we can get this over with. And in that moment, I just remember sitting up and thinking, like, what on earth am I doing? Like, this is not serving me. This is not helping me get to the bottom of the problem. And so it had been a few months of a break since I had seen my acupuncturist. So I called her up and said, we've really got an issue here to deal with. And it was getting in the way of my life. Like every year for, 12 years, my girlfriends and I headed into the Boundary Waters Canoe and Wilderness area. And I had to miss I love paddling, and I had to miss this trip because the antibiotics that I was on had given me such a bad yeast infection in my mouth, of all places. I thought my teeth were going to fall out. I was getting so sick from the medication that I was on to help the urinary tract infections. It was so frustrating. And so a couple of things, in that moment, I realized, oh, you know what? I've been on birth control, since I was 18, and there's no need to be on it. And I was on it to balance out my menstrual cycle. And that was like the last sort of synthetic, ongoing synthetic use, right, in my body. So my now husband, and then at the time we agreed to have me go off the birth control pill, and then we started to see my acupuncturist on a very regular basis, really taking on these urinary tract infections. And that was the first time that anybody had said to me, hey, you know what, you might have to eat differently than you do now. I was already eating differently than the rest of my family. When I was still living at home, I moved back home a couple of times in my early 20s for, a few weeks or a few months at a time. I would have like my part of the refrigerator because the food I was eating was already different. So it was a little unnerving to me for my acupuncturist to say, you know what, honey, we're going to have to clean up that diet. Because I was like, how can I clean it up any more than it already is? And here's the truth. There's always room for improvement. And the minute I started doing that, the minute I started seeing improvements. So that was the first time anybody had said to me, you know what, your body is too damp. It doesn't like dairy. And of course, at that time, I wasn't yet consuming raw dairy or cultured dairy, which I do now and handle it just fine. So that was one of the changes I made. And one of the other changes I made was starting to take wheat out of my diet. And I remember her saying, we should take wheat out of your diet. And I remember thinking like, well, okay, that's all right. Yeah, I can do that. And then after a week, I was like, what? You know, I like my crackers, I like my toast, I like my pasta, I like my bread. Um, and then it kind of occurred to me, like, if you look back at my, you know, freshman year of college, you know, like I'm blown up and I can tell you it wasn't just beer. You know, it was living on cereal and pasta and bagels and food that's cheap and somewhat filling, right? And I'm clear that that's where all of that weight came from. So she had me start to eliminate wheat. And she said, you know what, let's just take it down to one serving a day. And when I really thought about it, I realized that on any given day I was eating 2 or 3 slices of bread. And I'm not a sandwich girl, so that was like toast for me. I may have pasta. I may have crackers once or twice. I mean, so there was just wheat like everywhere I looked. And when I started to eliminate that, even just taking that down to one time a day, like I started to see changes, and it was so interesting. And I'm, you know, here to say it's been, I'm going to date myself here, 13 years, and I've only had one urinary tract infection since. Just one. And that was when my baby was a baby, 9 years ago. And that is so liberating and just exciting and freeing to know that with just a little bit of extra information and support, that I'm able to manage my health in such a way that keeps me feeling on top of it and keeps me feeling really empowered. So, you know, what does this have to do with what I'm doing right now? Well, I love nutrition response testing, which is one of the things that I do. And I love that it gives families information right from the get-go about what's going on in their body. And we don't have to draw blood, you know, we don't have to prick a finger, we don't have to go into the doctor's office. And so it's a really safe and affordable way to start getting an idea of what's going on in your body or in your baby's body or in your child's body, you know, if they're really struggling with something. And even if they're not, it's a fantastic way to just take a step towards being more proactive in their health, because mama has to start with you, right? It has to start with you taking those steps first, because you cook, you do the grocery shopping, you know, you are the one who models and implements for your children what healthy living looks like. So I share my story with you today because, you know, I just want to open myself up a little bit more. And, you know, I've had my share of adversity and having to, you know, modify my own lifestyle. And, you know, when I get to do it every day, it's not something I take for granted, because I really see what other moms have to deal with, you know, in terms of that just being another stressor in their life, figuring out what's going on with their health or the health of their kids. So as a reminder, for this month of March, I do have a spring break special for mom, and then for mom coming in and getting tested and then getting one of the kids tested for free instead of having that be another visit and another cost. So if you want to take advantage of that, you'll want to scroll down to follow the link below to learn a little bit more about nutrition response testing and to purchase your initial visit, and that will get you that 2-for-1, testing mom and testing one of your kiddos, and then we'll go ahead and get you on the calendar and find out what's going on in your bodies. So feel free to share what's going on in your life or questions or comments below, and let me know what's going on and how I can help to support you with nutrition response testing. Thanks for joining me.